One of the other things I've run into frequently, there's a sense that we have seen guns fired a million times on every TV show and movie, invariably held wrong and done incorrectly, right? But there's a sense that because we have seen a thing happen in all of these various shows, that we should be able to do the thing. We just, well, you point it over there and you pull the trigger and then the round goes exactly where you expect it to go.
Absolutely.
And just because you've seen it done a million times by somebody else does not mean for a second that you're going to step in behind this firearm and deliver bullseyes all day long. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Making Shooters Better. Today, I'm very fortunate to be joined by my friend, Kristen Wilson, who's not only a competitive shooter and firearms instructor, but also the brains behind Laser Ammo's marketing. Kristen, welcome.
Well, thank you, Terry, with that lovely voice and that amazing intro. I'm so happy to be here.
I've been faking the British accent for years.
Did I have a choice, though?
No, I think both of us had our arm twisted up behind our back to get this thing rolling, didn't we?
Absolutely.
So I have to start out by asking you the name of your company, because the first time I heard it, I swore I had misheard. And then I'm like, no, that sounds exactly like something Kristen would create. So tell us a little bit about the name of your training business and how you came up with it.
Well, you have to think of something original. So WTFKristen.com is my business name, and it stands for Women Training Firearms with Kristen. So I was trying to think of something fun, catchy, and I don't know. I mean, what the F it came from? But I had a chat with a girlfriend of mine. I said, do you think that would offend people? And she said, if they do, they're not your people. And I'm like, done. So it became, and I had a friend do up a logo. So the logo has the letters WTF from top to bottom, and then the words are spelled out. I think the F is like a firearm. So it kind of worked out really nicely. And I have fun with it because people remember. So I'm like, hey, go to my website, WTF Kristen. They're looking at me. I'm like, yep, exactly what you're thinking. WTF Kristen.
Well, it is true. I think we pick our friends based on those that share our sense of humor. So if somebody doesn't get it, you can immediately just cross them off the list.
They're not going to contact
not your people.
me.
But it was funny because the first time I heard it, the WTF, I had a moment. That isn't what I think I heard, is it? And I went back and I was like, nope, it is. Okay, that sounds about right.
Yep. That's hilarious.
So let me start. Did you shoot as a kid?
Not as a kid. I mean, what do you call a kid? It's all perspective, right? I learned how to shoot when I was about 16, 18. I wanted to be a cop when I was a kid. So then I was doing all the things because you couldn't get into law enforcement in California unless you were 20 and a half. And I think that's probably most states are that way as well. So I did the learn how to shoot from the San Diego Police Department. Well, actually, I didn't learn how to shoot there. I did take a firearms safety course and learn some more of the fundamentals there. And then just continued with the 45, mind you. A 1911 45 is where I learned to shoot with the targets that would disappear.
Do the sideways turn and rotations.
Yes, because it was a real police range and everything. And I would shoot with my stepdad and just, I found that I was naturally good at it. And it just, kind of went from there. And so I just always, everywhere I went, I would shoot a little bit here and there. And then when I moved down to, probably jumping ahead, when I moved down to Texas, I joined a ladies group and then found out about competition. So it just kind of blended. And once ladies find out that you shoot, they want your help. And they're like, oh, you should help me buy a firearm. You should teach me how to shoot. Mm-hmm. Then became you should pay me. So I started my business. So it's kind of like, that's kind of the full circle of me shooting, getting into competition, and then thus leading to having a business. So.
It's interesting you started with a 45, though. In my experience, most of the time, that is not the caliber to start somebody shooting with and go, let's just throw you in the deep end. Here's a 45.
Right. But also keep in mind, too, this was 1990. So I was, it's a couple decades ago.
A couple of decades. Yes. Uh-huh.
It was a while ago, so I think it was from my stepdad. So again, he's 20, probably 20-some years older than me. It's kind of what he liked. So it was actually his firearm. I actually liked it. I ended up buying it from him, and so now it's mine. But just that's kind of the thing that everybody had was like 45s, and then Obama happened, and then I needed cheaper ammo. I went to 9mm.
And that got it changed. So you said, was it your dad? Your stepdad did the shooting?
Stepdad, which actually my dad was in the Marine Corps. So a lot of times military people, you think, oh, well, I was in the military, I didn't know how to shoot. And it's just kind of like, well, usually in the military, unless you have a specialization in small arms, you're learning how to shoot with a rifle. And that's, you go to bed with your rifle. And my dad was in artillery. And so, it's more of my ex-husband was, logistics. He took I think it was PMI school or something of training. So that's the handguns, but mostly it's rifles for military.
Yeah. I found, though, having taught as much as I have over the years now, that if I'm going to start a new shooter out shooting, I start them with the smallest caliber we can get our hands on, which invariably is a 22, and start there because it's pops instead of bangs. It's a good way to kind of ease somebody into the shooting sports. I think too many times with first-time shooters, somebody thinks it's going to be funny or clever to hand them the largest firearm they have in their arsenal, and immediately it puts them off. Well,
Right.
Not always, but sometimes you'll have someone who just shoots that thing and they're like, this is great. They're having a good time. But most of the time for first-time shooters, a 22 is kind of, oh, well, that's manageable. And then I feel personally like as an instructor, I'm like, okay, the hook is set. If I can get them to really enjoy this experience now, you've welcomed a new shooter to the fold.
Well, I have a slightly different perspective than you, and I actually don't start women on, so my women training firearms, right, is I start them with a 9mm, and I start them with a full size, because women, we learn things differently. We want to know all the things about it beforehand, and we want more control. And we have more control when you have all of your hand on the gun. So if you've got a gun where it's a small gun and it kind of cuts you off in the middle of your hand, you're like, your pinky's sitting here going, well, where do I go? Where does all this stuff happen? So I tell ladies, 22s are great for maybe rabbits, squirrels, and snakes, and stick to starting with a 9mm. I don't even stick with a 380. 380s are fine, but they're also a little bit more expensive ammo-wise because it's not as popular. So why don't you stick with the 9, where there's so many different options as firearms, and you have so many different options with ammo. Because the other thing with women is we don't necessarily customize right out of the box, other than maybe color, which I try to get ladies to find a gun that they like, then accessorize. So find a gun that you like the most, and it's like, it's not, they understand that you could get these sights or this trigger or this, but they're not going to go do that like men would. Men, the minute they get a gun, they're like, oh, I'm going to change this, I'm going to change this, I'm going to get this. And women are like, I want something that's most done and ready for me out of the box that I can deal with. And then they start to get more comfortable, and then maybe start to accessorize.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a couple that came in for training, and she wasn't anti-gun per se. I don't think she wasn't an enthusiast. She was more just, I'm tagging along, my husband wants to shoot, and I was running him through some tactical stuff. And about midway point through this session, I saw her watching, and she had that curiosity, was kind of itch. And I was like, would you like to try like this particular drill? I said, if it doesn't work for you, you don't like it, whatever, then no worries. Well, she got up, she nailed that target. Like she had been sitting there just soaking in everything I was telling her husband, he was a great shot, and she nails this thing. And the next thing these two are running like parallels and entries, and it was phenomenal. By the time this couple left, because she had bought this tactical training package for her husband as an anniversary gift, as they were leaving, they were walking away, and I heard her say something like, you know what, my AR at home, I haven't used it very much, but I think if I were to get that red dot you've been talking about, and maybe we get a suppressor for it. The guy, he doesn't even make it to the car. He just turns around near where we're about to leave, and he throws his hands above his head, and he said, I love you, man. It was brilliant. I was like, That is
Awesome.
how you end up with a really, happy couple with a great hobby to go do some shooting together. But it was hilarious because when she finally stepped up, you could see her curiosity was piqued, and she got in behind the rifle and she was just nailing this thing. And she was like, "Oh, I didn't realize, it could be like this." And I'm like, yes, that was absolutely, it felt like a massive win.
Well, and obviously she felt really comfortable with you in that she probably kind of watched for a minute. And then when she kind of got comfortable, it was just kind of like, that doesn't look that bad. There's not 50 million people sitting here watching me. This is my husband and, you or whomever. And it's kind of like, let me try that. And it's kind of like, all right, I could do this. So feeling comfortable and confident, we kind of have to do that way.
Yeah. No, and it was, and her husband was super supportive. It was like, this is great. He didn't have, there was no criticism. There was no, well, you have to do it this way. You have to do it that. He was very much in tune with, well, that might not work for her. So let's try this or let's try that. And eventually she got off and running. She was super comfortable. But I think it's that supportive environment. It was just brilliant. It was so good to see. And I think in so many instances, women, probably hesitant, but once they get in and the curiosity's piqued, their ability to soak up what you're teaching them is off the charts, and then they'll implement it. And 9 times out of 10, they're brilliant.
Absolutely, because we listen. We listen to instruction.
Exactly.
We actually follow instruction, and we don't have egos for the most part in the way. And so we actually have really good hand-eye coordination, and when we put those things into practice, we're actually really good at it.
Yeah,
but it's just about getting past that barrier of, I don't know what I'm doing and everybody knows it, or I don't know what I'm doing and what's going to happen when, or what's going to happen if, because emotions. Hello, women, we're emotional. So everything we do is tied to emotions as well. So
yeah, no, I think that's a good point. It's the what's going to happen if. And then once they feel like they're in charge and in control, I have not ever had someone that, I've had people who've walked away from the firearm saying, hey, it's just not for me. And I get it. I've had guys do that. But most of the time, once they feel like, oh, I'm in charge, I'm in control of this firearm, and they feel that confidence come, they're like, I'm good. Just get out of their way now. Let them send some downrange.
Absolutely. Funny you say that too, because it's usually, we're still shooting 9mm, and we'll go from one gun to another. They're like, is this kick better or worse? Is it harder? Is it, and you're doing this motion. I'm like, this is not going to happen. Talking like this, a slight flip. And I'm like, why don't you just find out? And that's why a lot of times I start with dry fire, because it removes that element. It allows me to drill down the fundamentals, make sure that they're on check. And then we dry fire without anything in it. So rack in the slide, and then the smokeless range, and then we go to the range. So it's kind of like we built up to it. And the interesting thing is when we get to the range, they start off really good, like perfection. And then it starts to slide, because now they're like, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. But then they start thinking about the bang, and then we get in our head because we expect perfection. And then sometimes I'll just like drop the magazine, drop out drop out any ammo that you have. Let's just try fire again. And then you see that flinch start going in there. We fix it, put the ammo back in, and start again. So it's kind of like sometimes they get in their head that, okay, I don't know what to expect, and I do well. Now I know what to expect, and now I'm overthinking it.
Yeah. One of the other things I've run into frequently, there's a sense, and this can be for males or females, that we have seen guns fired 1 million times on every TV show and movie, invariably held wrong and done incorrectly, right? But there's a sense that because we have seen a thing happen in all of these various shows, that we should be able to do the thing. We just, you point it over there and you pull the trigger, and then the round goes exactly where you expect it to go. And I often have to kind of tell people, male or female, the pause. I'm like, this is not like TV. This is a skill set that requires a particular set of applicable strategies to achieve the objective. Absolutely. And just because you've seen it done 1 million times by somebody else does not mean for a second that you're going to step in behind this firearm and deliver bullseyes all day long.
Yep. Or like, Keanu, 25 guys fall, no reloading,
Yep. Fully auto. It's surprising to watch people. They go, whoa, that's getting away from me. I'm like, yeah, it will.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Yep. I love Hollywood for the mere fact that they're a good example for a lot of different things that we shouldn't do.
Yeah.
I'll see something on TV. I'm like, pause, back up, pause, back up. And I'm like taking pictures of it.
Yep.
And then I post it to my group and it's like, all right, this is not great. Don't do this,
Do not do this thing.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately, there's much more of that than there is actual good firearm usage.
Right. Sadly.
So what drew you into competitive shooting?
When I joined that ladies group and I heard about it, I was like, oh, well, let me give this a go. That sounds kind of fun. Yeah, I was excellent at target shooting, but it's like standing there, downrange, pull the trigger. It wasn't
Static.
You're not moving, you're not doing anything, and when I started it, I found that I was actually pretty good at it because I practiced safety so much and that I knew how to shoot. So now it's like, now I have to manage moving and shooting and managing the round count and, up range, down range, lateral movements, reloading, moving across as a right-handed shooter, moving to the left is a little bit weird, the crab walk thing.
Yeah.
So I just found that I was really good at it. And quite honestly, it kind of goes back to the situational awareness thing and home self-defense is you put so much stuff in muscle memory that now my hope is that I can focus on the bad guy or the thing happening and not worry about how many rounds do I have in my magazine? Where's my reload? How do I get to do this while I'm moving? What am I going to use for cover? Those kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people go from static firing and they are nails. And the moment you introduce movement, the complexities of having to move, in a variety of directions under a variety of environmental conditions, the wheels come off.
Right. And now I find that even going back to target practice, because I'm used to that not having a perfect shot, I don't need that shot in the teeny tiny little X. I can shoot on the 8-inch plate or something like that. I'm okay with a stray, outside because the points don't matter as much for one sport than they do another as long as you're quick enough on it. So then I go back to target practice and I'm like, and I'm like, okay, how about slow one shot, a second? It's just like, phew. I feel like I'm in slow motion. So I still go faster. So sometimes my accuracy is decreased a little bit because I speed up when I don't, which is, that's the sport is trying to balance time and accuracy, speed versus accuracy. That's the main thing, trying to figure out that balance, which I'm not exceptional at.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? You go to those things to improve and become, closer to your ideal, but that you shouldn't start out there. Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's a great community.
Yeah, good camaraderie. So what type of competitive shooting do you do most?
So pretty much here, I'm in Texas, USPSA and IDPA. And there's less IDPA now here. So I do some traveling around the United States to, Florida and Virginia, Maryland, Washington, Colorado, Michigan. So I've traveled around for competition. So most of mine now is USPSA. That's just because that's what I have closest to me.
Yeah.
But still IDPA, I find the community is great in IDPA.
So for anyone that's listening that perhaps hasn't explored competitive shooting, tell us the differences between the two that you do the most.
So I would say IDPA is great for beginners because it basically gives you have a stage and it's kind of like, this is where you have to start. This is where you have to go. So it kind of tells you the direction of where you have to go. There may be one option outside of that you can go in this direction or you can stay back here versus moving up. But mostly your path is told to you and you have to shoot in tactical priority because it's meant for defensive. So you're going to shoot from the outside in. If you're peeling around the right corner, you're going to shoot from the right to left. If you're peeling around the left corner, left to right. So I think that, and you can't drop loaded magazine. So a couple of little nuances and you wear a cover garment. Whereas USPSA, spray them. As you see them, shoot them
full
as
send
many times as you want. Yeah, speed, accuracy is important, but it's if you're faster, if you throw an Alpha Charlie, so a center and then one right outside. If you throw a Charlie, it's not important to make up a Charlie with another Charlie or an Alpha as long as you're going fast. So if you're slow, then your accuracy is important because you need something in your favor. Whereas IDPA is more of a sport where if you're a Charlie, which is now one down is 1 second. If you could shoot 4 rounds in a second, then might behoove you to make up that Charlie, now a -1, to a 0. Because theirs is basically raw time minus how many points down is now your total time, whereas USPSA is math. So like a bell curve. You get those really smart kids or those really fast race gun optic guys that kind of screw up the bell curve. And it is points, but it's like points versus kind of that speed versus points system that, again, I still haven't mastered the points part of it because it's not just a simple, math, 1 + 1. It's because your speed time determines how much it factors in your points. Weird.
So if you've got someone that's spent several months dialing in their shooting, they've got the fundamentals down. Like they are able to shoot that tight group. They know their firearm, very well. They know how to clear the malfunctions. They're in a good place, but there's still a relatively new shooter. Which competition do you think would be most advantageous to them?
Well, I mean, I would say IDPA would be good, but however, if that's not near them, then you do USPSA. You're still going to get the fundamentals. You're gonna take the rails off because you're gonna push your limits. You're gonna move, and I even encourage my students, even if you're not interested in competition, if you do competition, it'll help teach you to move and shoot and think about so many different things at once while being safe and focusing on the target. And then putting so much more muscle memory, even for people who don't want to, win or don't think they can win. It's still great for teaching those skills because you can't really draw from the holster at a local range unless they have a holster variance or, they allow that kind of thing. So you have to you're limited on what you can do.
Yeah, I did. It was a bit of a shock to the system because I lived in Wyoming for 5.5 years, and that's where I did a lot of my tactical instruction. And then when I came back and had to go indoors to do my own practice shooting, I was like, oh, you're killing me here. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. It was incredibly restrictive, and especially when I like moving. I like movements, and I like combining them together because especially for self-defense, it's not going to be static. You're going to be moving. Potentially the threat's going to be moving. There's going to be all sorts of environmental variables you've got to account for. This is a type of, this is the only type of math I'm any good at. I'm like, okay, I'm moving. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. And once you sort of, I said, call it the flow state, but you enter that zone where everything is working. I think when those instances happen, first of all, they're rare, but when they happen, they're amazing. And that's one of the few things I think you get from engaging in competitive shooting that it's very hard to do in an indoor range when things are static.
Absolutely. And just even the simple getting off the X, you can't really do that because you're limited on. And I'm not a small person, so I fill out that space. Like, boom.
Yep, you're like, boom, off the bumper.
It's like a mosh pit, Ugh.
Yeah, like not going anywhere. Yeah, that's kind of hard to tell. It's hard to teach someone on an indoor range as well. You're like, here, we're going to get off the X, but you're only going to get off the X about 3 inches to your left because that's the only space you have left.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm in that space because I'm helping you, so let me move.
So what has been your proudest moment on the range as far as competition's concerned, and also what has been your toughest?
Well, it's tough because I think that I've found, I'm not putting in as much work as I should or I could in order to get better. So I'm because I've got a lot on my plate as far as life and teaching and work and the different volunteer organizations that I'm in. So I'm not putting in as much time as I could to get better. So I've kind of recently come to a realization of I'm okay with being a B shooter and USPSA and a master shooter and IDPA. I'm okay with being there. I'm also an iron sight shooter in a carry optic race gun. Mine's strictly out of the box, except for an Apex trigger. I have an M&P Pro that's stock minus a trigger with iron sights. I just shot a major match last weekend and 240 people, 10 women, 7 were limited shooters, 1 revolver. There were 7 or so single stack, which also means iron sights. And then there was, I think, about 6 or 7 production, which also means iron sights. So we're talking less than 20 people were shooting iron sights of some sort.
Yeah.
And the rest were all optics and race guns and open guns, or PCC, with your pistol carbine. So, like, there's definitely an advantage of that. And that's kind of like, that's okay. You know, I've come to, like, I can make it a priority if I really wanted to, but I'm okay with still getting in the time, spending time with good people in my community, getting out of Dodge because I wasn't here. I was, traveled up to North Texas. So, but my pride moments are basically more my students. I mean, just, having a good stage is a good thing, or having a stage plan that maybe somebody else didn't think of, and I'm going to just do it anyways. I'll do it. And it's like, that went really pretty well. So even if I had a couple of crappy stages, it's nice to be able to come back and know that I had a crappy day yesterday, which Saturday was a crappy day, but Sunday I had an all great stage. And the last stage this past weekend was a part-time stage. So you have to step into the shooting box, load your firearm. You have a target there, run up range. You have 2 targets that are basically a headshot only because you've got a no shoot in front of it. And then you've got a target at an angle. Your max points was 40, and I got 32. Not bad for a B shooter.
That's
and
fantastic.
Actually, I looked at it, out of 240 people, I was 14 on that one.
That's
So
fantastic.
overall, I was 14th. Now, the rest of them weren't that great, but I was like, this was the end of my day of a half good, half match. And I managed to hold my own throughout the rest of the day. And I finished on a high note. So I was pretty proud that I managed to do that. When we second guess ourselves, and you have to guess, am I going to shoot in the 6 seconds, or am I going to shoot more, or am I going to stop less and undervalue myself and think that I don't have the skills to do it? And I pushed it. And that was actually last weekend. So I was pretty proud of that.
Nice. It's a good job. Well, I think you mentioned something important there, and that is life. We have a myriad of things we have to get done day in, day out. It's family, work, family again. It's just trying to fit in the practice necessary to try and achieve a goal that you may never be able to get to. Is something that everybody, I think, comes to a point where he says, like, this is as good as I'm likely to get. And can you be satisfied or happy with that level? And
Right.
will you then dedicate what small amount of time you have available to practice and either live fire or dry fire to maintain that level?
Absolutely.
And I think the people who are the happiest are the ones that do exactly what you just alluded to, which is to say, I'm happy right here. I am good. I am competent. I hit, 95% of what I'm aiming at in the place I wanted to hit it. That's fantastic.
Right. Absolutely.
I think a lot of people set unrealistic, goals for themselves, and you're like, listen, you don't have to be there.
Right. Absolutely. And I'm still getting in the practice to be more physically aware, because I am live firing probably 3 matches a month. So we're already talking about easily 600 rounds that I am throwing down range, and versus the majority of the everyday carry people are probably not even shooting that in a year, and they're carrying around something. So I highly encourage people to live or dry fire, preferably both. But dry fire you can do at home. It's so easy.
It is.
To the range, or you can get to a match.
Yeah. So I'd like to touch on that a little bit more, actually. With women listening who may feel nervous about stepping onto the range for the first time, what's you think, most important piece of advice for them?
I would suggest get some training, because basically I usually do 2 sessions, one like in home and all the things, all the fundamentals, and then dry fire, so that when they see that we just dry fired in a home, then now they would be more apt to dry fire at home. If you have somebody who's never touched a gun in a house and I said, hey, Terry, I want you to go dry fire after our session, you'd be like, what? I've never touched my gun in my house before. It's always been at the range. It's not normal for you. So a lot of ladies would be more apprehensive to do that unless they've seen it happen. And we've already talked about the safety aspects and et cetera. So having training to make you feel confident that you can go to the range and whether somebody wants to help you, which usually happens for women. I've trained at this local range, and there's usually the SO that has come up at least twice or 3 times to say, just letting you know, you've got 30 minutes. And I'm thinking, you're not telling the guy next door he's got 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes left. So it's like, why do you need to? And then sometimes they're just standing in there watching, and it's like, have you never seen a girl shoot before? Have you never seen a girl trainer shoot, train people before? Are you learning something? Can I help you? It's like, so but to get over that is important for us women to we need to step out. We need to ignore what the outside influence is and just do it. Now ask when you need help, be safe, and then ask if you need help.
All right, mates, quick favor. If you like what we're doing here, please go ahead and smash those buttons. The usual suspects: like, follow, subscribe, share. It's the only way to feed the algorithm beast, and it helps us to keep bringing you the content, the stories, the training tips that you want to hear. That's it. You click, we deliver. Now, let's get you back to the episode. Just in defense of SOs and RSOs everywhere, I can't tell you how many times I have been on a lane shooting and I have somebody literally over my shoulder going, what's this dude up to? And it depends a lot of time on how you respond. I often turn around and, I'll poke fun at whatever I just did, because invariably I've missed when they're standing there looking. But I think it does happen. But there's also a lot of pressure that comes with having someone look over your shoulder when you're doing something that is new to you.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, being in a minority in the demographics and with women doing everything emotionally, we're already overthinking it anyways. So they're probably just going, damn, that's a cool gun. And she's probably thinking, what the freak is he doing? Why do you keep staring at me? Or he's looking and going, wow, she shoots great, or I'm bored and I'm just going to watch somebody shoot. But again, we all get in our own heads, right? So
yeah. But I've also witnessed, the opposite side of that, where someone has said something, whether it was intentionally derogatory or they just thought they were being funny, but the comments have thrown. We were at an event recently, and it was chiefs of police, and this particular police chief was female, and she was walking around with a family member who was there to just, go around with her, hang out with her aunt, and she stepped up to run a dry fire drill on the smokeless range where we had our booth and stuff set up. The guys behind us said, oh, stand by, everyone take cover. And they thought they were hilarious. But it was funny because I was watching the police chief's face and she was fuming. And I'm like, I wonder if those guys, of course, they're actually thinking about it. They never did make a derogatory comment about any of the guys who stepped up to shoot. It was only when a female stepped up. And the irony here is, she said, I shot as a kid and I haven't shot too much since, but I do remember the lessons. And she shot better than at least 80% of the men that stepped up to the range. And she nailed it.
Yep. I've had several men specifically tell me, after they didn't know me before, we're shooting a competition, I'm helping run the tablet, and after the match they're like, wow, you actually shot well. And I'm thinking,
the qualifying actually
like, were you expecting me to not shoot well? What was giving you the impression that I wasn't going to be just as good or average as anybody else that was there to shoot?
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for going to the range and being as supportive of everyone on both sides of the aisle as we can.
Yep.
At the end of the day, we're building community, and you should. And I've run into a lot of people who are supportive. It's just unfortunate that the ones who are negative or critical or sarcastic, or just say something without thinking about it, like, actually, that was pretty good, that you're like, oh, it sets my teeth off.
And I actually, one of the times I said, oh, yeah, thanks, not bad for a girl. And I'm hoping that how I worded that was just kind of like, thanks. You do know how that sounded, and that was just kind of rude. And then I just kept walking. But it's like, you don't have to be that way. So we need to not be so emotional about it, which is really hard because that's our whole makeup, right? And we just need to not let it bother us. But guys need to be a little bit more aware of how they say things to where it's not demeaning sounding for any demographic, quite honestly.
Any of them.
New shooters, you want new shooters. So the sport can't grow if you're
Correct.
top heavy. So
Yep.
you need to get people from the bottom, and I don't mean bottom as they suck, but I mean bottom as people have to enter the sport and work their way up. But you can't work your way up if most of the sport is like bumps. You have bumps based on how many people are in your division and class. So if there's nobody there to help bump you up, then you're never going to grow. So kind of like my limited class, I'm never going to see a bump to another, level unless there's X amount of people below me that will allow me to do that. So how do we get more people is to encourage more people to come into the sport. How do we do that? By being welcoming.
Yes, and not sarcastic, or at least not sarcastic until you get to know someone, and then you can tear into them. That's half the fun, especially after Top Shot. I would go out and shoot a competition or do something, and somebody would be like, "You were on TV? Really? For shooting?" And I laugh it off. I don't care. Everybody has good days. Everybody has bad days. But it was always funny when that individual would then have to step up and shoot, and I would give them crap, and then you could see them, they turn cherry red, they get all uppity. And you're like, so you're a disher, but you can't take it. You know, it's always just funny to watch that. Awesome. And the guys that I tended to bond with, male or female shooters, the ones I bond with are the ones that can dish it out and take it. Like everybody's there to have a good time, and cracking funnies is just part of the experience.
That's why we get along. Because
exactly.
I'll take it too.
So you've already mentioned being an advocate for dry fire. I am too. I think it's one of the things that most shooters should probably be doing more. But what do you think, if anything, that most shooters get wrong about dry fire practice?
That you don't need to. I do their social media for laser ammo, and you would not believe how many ads or posts that we put out about dry fire, and it's like, nah, the same. I'll just shoot my rifle. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad that you can take your rifle to the range, pay the range fee. You have a place that you can go that allows it. You have either a free membership, because that exists, right? And you pay for ammo, and you can do that, at any time. Oh, by the way, the range closes at 9. So maybe if the kids are down, you can't do that, or having a significant other that's home to watch the kids while you go do that, or, sports with your family, etc. So it's like you don't understand. The point of dry fire is not to take away live fire practice, which you should do, but it allows you to do more of it. Like, for example, I have my competition pistol is on the kitchen counter. Now, mind you, I don't have children at home or anything like that, so I don't have to worry about the safety issue, but it's sitting on the kitchen counter. So when I'm having lunch, 12 o'clock every day, I have my lunch, and then I'll do some dry fire. And it's not every day, so sometimes I don't do it. But if it's there, and if it's out, and it's ready, I have zero excuses. And so that allows me to put my hands on it for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And when I've trained ladies that haven't passed their qualifications for either their license to carry, their LTC here, or a different jailer or certification, I say, you know what I need you to do? I need you to touch your firearm 5 minutes every day, at least 3 times a day. If they've got a bad grip, that's something that you can just pick up the gun, get a good grip, put it back down. Pick up the gun, get a good grip. Or sight acquisition, just push out to see those sights, put it back down. You can do 20 reps of that, and it starts putting it into muscle memory. Because I've seen people who have bad grips, and the first few times they pick up the gun, they've got that teacup grip, for example. But after several times of going through that, sorry, and people calling me.
It happens.
And guess who it is?
We don't even need to say a name.
Oh, my Lord. So anyway, so it's like after just 5 or 6 reps of doing it the right way, I can see when they pick it up again, their mind is already thinking of, nope, I need to adjust this, and then they continue on. So they're already processing it after just a few times. So if they can keep that going, they can keep that reputation going.
Well, one of the other things I'll throw in the ring here as well was something you alluded to earlier, and that is most people, if we boil it down to brass tacks, have a firearm at home for defensive use, but then never pick up the firearm at home. Certainly not to do dry fire or run drills or clear their house or do any of the myriad of things that you should really be practicing in order to position your knowledge of yourself, the firearm, the environment, in a way that you are de-stressing yourself. Because let's face it, if the first time you pick up a firearm inside your own home is because there's a bump in the night or somebody's, just kicked in your front door, the stress of that alone is often enough for, all of the fundamentals to go out of the window.
Absolutely.
Whereas I think with careful application and, obviously safety first and then get into your dry fire. But if you are able to dry fire at home and become familiar with your environment and not just familiar from I lounge around here, this is where I'm happy and cozy, but also where are my corners? What kind of corners do I have? And is this a center fed room? Well, what does that even mean? Oh, okay, I got to look both ways coming. You can't, right? There are some things you only figure out when you're put into a position of practicing in such a way as to become familiar with the tactical challenges of being in a defensive situation in your own home. And dry fire helps with a lot of that, and at least takes a modicum of pressure off you if you have to pick up that firearm defensively at home.
Well, and that was just that point too, is getting people comfortable with dry fire at home allows them to stage some targets around their house, or just start, because I teach situational awareness as well, is all right, well, who's going to grab the firearm? Who's grabbing the kids? Who's calling 911? Which way are you pointing that gun down that hallway? Whose bedroom is on the other side of that? So maybe reevaluating your plan to make it a safer one. And when you're practicing, preparation, right? Preparation is the key to having a successful, result. If you haven't planned it ever, then you can't put it into muscle memory because it's never been practiced before. The reason why we did all these fire drills back when I was a kid and we had earthquakes back in California, it's like we had these drills for a reason, which to put things into muscle memory. We stand in line, we walk down the hall, blah, blah, blah. This is where we're going. We may not walk a straight line down the hall if there was a real fire, but we know which way we're going because it has been ingrained in us. And unfortunately, our children have to practice other kinds of drills. But putting some of that stuff into practice and being aware that this could happen and having those conversations with our children or our grandchildren is really important as well. And what happens if somebody breaks in this house? What are the children to do? So they're not running out into the open and going, "What is that, Mom?" And now they're, a hostage. So.
Yeah. And there's also the caveat to that is understanding the tactical challenges of moving through your own home and clearing it also can bring home to some people that if you have a choice whether to go and check out the bump in the night, or perhaps it's just you and your significant other, there's a bump in the night, well, just stay where you are. Yep, set up your ambush place, call for the police, and wait. Don't go trying to clear your house by yourself because you feel like, well, I watched John Wick. I know how this is done, and then off you move, and you really have no comprehension of how dangerous it is to do solo CQB.
Yeah. I mean, that exactly it. And that's what I tell them too. It's like people will say, oh, well, I'm going to go down, here. And I'm like, you have the element of surprise. Your house. Yes, you could probably figure out from it, but as they're moving through your house, they're getting adjusted to the light. Let them. So you're just going to sit there and I'm sitting and wait. And I'm like, ready for you to come around this corner. And I know. So in that way, I'm not making any noise. I've already called the police. I've already, called the police and hung up. Your phone's on vibrate or on silent. I've already got a plan to what I'm going to do. And it's going to be to sit there. And I know it's pointed in a safe direction. I don't have any children in the house anymore. But if there were to be a guest in the bedroom that it would have been an issue for, it's no longer an issue because I'm going in the opposite direction because that's been my plan.
Yeah. It's funny. I had a friend of mine who's he's retired now, but he was I think it was 5th Special Forces Group, and he came home from shopping on a Saturday with his wife, drove into their driveway, could see the front of the house, and the front door is open. They knew they didn't leave it open, so somebody kicked in the front door. And his wife was like, somebody has screwed up, because when you make entry, they're going to meet, my high-speed, low-drag husband, and they don't know what's about to hit him. And he looked at her, and he said he took all the wind out of her sails. He's like, I'm not going in there. He said, everything I would die for is sitting right here. Why am I going in the house? He's like, get on the phone, call the police. I'll have my firearm ready in case somebody comes out and attacks us. But no, I'm not going in there. And I I heard this story and I celebrated. I'm like, that was the best decision I think I've ever heard by somebody that you might, in some circumstances, expect to just charge on in. And he's like, no, I'm not going in there. Solo CQB is bloody dangerous. Why am I going in? I'd go in if you were in there. Then yes, absolutely, I'd make entry. But I'm like, that is the distinction. That is somebody with enough experience and knowledge under their belt to know that's an unnecessary risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Why? Yes, this is my home. Yes, this is my castle. But do I want to be dead in my castle? Or because I don't know what's on the other side of the door. And
exactly,
they kind of may be lying in wait because they heard the garage door open or they heard the door. Now they're going to lie in wait, and now I'm screwed. So, what sense does that make? Other than if somebody is in there that so
exactly. Well, given your experience, especially as an instructor and a competitive shooter, if there was one thing you wish you could tell every female shooter, whether they're a novice or a pro, what would it be?
Well, you've heard this before because you cheated. It's all about safety. It's just when I teach women how to shoot, I over accentuate the safety habits of, keeping your hand not in front of the firearm, even if you're pointing in front of the firearm, keeping your firearm the forwardmost point if you're on a table, to where it's just over exaggerated. And I say that, even if you were to do it with, other than a play finger gun, everything else is real. And if you treat everything with the utmost safety, then the chances of accidents, because accidents is just improper handling, in my opinion, then you'll have a lot less chance of that. And for women who have children or grandchildren, they're like, I don't have a gun in my house because children. That is the opposite of what should be happening. You should have a gun in your house because of children. Just lock them up.
Yeah, and teach them how to be safe and respectful.
Absolutely. At the age appropriate means. So, yeah.
Good info. All right.
Absolutely.
So we've reached that point where we're going to do some rapid fire questions. And this is going to be a challenge because I want yes or no's.
Uh-oh. Have you met me?
Yes, I have. That's why I said it was going to be a challenge. All right, first one. Are you for point shooting?
Am I what?
For point shooting.
It depends.
That'll do. If you had to choose one type of target you had to use forever, would you go with paper or steel?
Paper.
Do you think the shot timer is an essential tool for training?
Yes.
Can only use one gun for the rest of your life. What are you using?
Wesson. Smith & Wesson.
Smith & Wesson.
That wasn't a yes or no question.
No, it wasn't, actually. I just realized I screwed up. But you know what? I wanted that question in there because it's so funny to hear what people are, when they're forced to make a choice on which one they could have forever and ever. It's always interesting to see which ones people pick.
I shoot with a Smith & Wesson, M&P Pro. I have a backup that's a Pro. I have the regular one that's the 4-inch. I carry the shield. I have a 45 Smith & Wesson in the kitchen. So, yeah, I have the family. And I just got the competitor to put the red dot on it to learn how to practice with red dot. So,
that's
the competitor also Smith & Wesson.
Smith & Wesson loving you right now.
Anti-law.
I'm staying quiet. All right. So last thing, if there are any shooters in your area who are interested in following up with you because they've heard what you've said and they think you would be a great instructor for them, where can they reach you?
WTF Kristen. That's KRISTEN 10.com, and obviously laserammo.com because I do all the social for laser ammo. So
yes, and it's such a great tool, especially for the dry fire training at home. I think it's the best.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Gary.
That was a wealth of information. It was so much fun having this chat with you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you to everyone for tuning in to Making Shooters Better. Don't forget, feed the algorithm beast, please. Like, share, subscribe, and help keep us in the fight. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.